Welcome to the Politics of Everything. I'm Amber Daines, your host and podcast producer. This is a half hour of power, a podcast dropping every week where I unpack the politics of everything, from money to motherhood, nutrition to narcissism, startups to secularism, the environment, quality, and much, much more. Our guests are seasoned in the field or topic of their choice, even if you've not heard of them yet. This is a non-partisan show. So while I love exploring varied views and get a buzz from a healthy debate of ideas, this is not a purely blue, white, green program. Please subscribe, tune in and enjoy the politics of everything. While many of my guests are talking from experience and often professional prowess is at the heart of these podcasts, but not always. Life is more than career or business, and the politics of everything was never designed to be an entirely business-minded podcast. Enter today's guest, who has a new book, How to Get Laid on Tinder for Men, and that caught my imagination right away. To set the scene, Maureen Pound had not had a single date in 7 years. She was busy running her own business, raising 2 sperm donor children on her own, and that was a bit life-changing because she basically had an incident which really set the scene for what happens next. She was on Thailand on a bike ride with 50 other entrepreneurs raising money for orphans, and she decided to get back on that horse. And what an adventure. And when we say the horse, I think we mean the dating horse. Over the last 6 years that followed, she matched with thousands of men on Tinder, talked with over 500 and met close to 100. She went on walks, played tennis, had coffee, dinner, drinks, and had a few sneaky rendezvous. She heard stories of frustration and annoyance from a lot of men and decided she wanted to help, to share ideas and strategies to help them meet great people. And that's how the idea for How to Get Laid on Tinder for Men was born. She's passionate about supporting men and giving them the tools to communicate well, both online and offline. She's practical and fun and not afraid to be direct. So this should be one heck of a podcast. And just a small warning, perhaps this is not one for minors or anyone not keen to understand what goes on in the Tinderverse. So welcome to my show, Maureen.
Thanks, Amber.
I'm excited to share that my only podcasting platform of choice since I launched The Politics of Everything in 2017 has become my first sponsor. Check out the podcaster discount link in our show notes and stay tuned to find out more soon. Well, this should be lots of fun, but I want to sort of delve into something I ask all my guests. Do you remember what you wanted to be when you grew up, and did that happen? What's your kind of career and professional journey?
So I grew up the youngest of 9 children, bit of a working class family. They were much older than me. I spent a lot of time on my own. So I used to spend days out on the concrete veranda, looking at the grass, talking to the grass. My ultimate career was Mother of the World, where I could inform anybody what to say and how to say it in any situation. So sure, you're not really expecting that, but it sort of did come into fruition because my first job was when I was 14 and I worked at Coles City Store 200. And I was there for many years while still at school and university. And I did, in fact, know what to say to anybody to get the result that I wanted. So one incident was that I basically lost it one day with the HR manager, and I think even swore at her. And I don't know what was going on for me, maybe year 12 exams. And most people would be sacked. So she called me up to the office and I talked my way out of it. In fact, she gave me a promotion.
Wow, that sounds very bold and perhaps sets the scene for how you ended up writing a book like you have. I want to just take your mind back. You've obviously been on loads of dates and Tinder's been around for a while. And I have to admit and confess, I've watched other people on Tinder, but I've been married for a very long time and met my husband the very old-fashioned way at a party in Bondi many years ago. So I've not actually experienced this world, but I have vicariously lived through friends of mine who've been on lots of Tinder dates and the other apps as well. Do you recall that first experience on Tinder, perhaps when you've downloaded that app and then sort of getting familiar with, you know, all the matches and the likes and whatever else happens? How did that make you feel the first time you kind of had that experience?
So I want to hear Amber say I've had 2 experiences. So I went on, one of the first apps, which was RSVP many years ago.
I remember that
and
one.
I had very ordinary experiences, even though it was 90% men back then, back in the early 90s. And I put up a photo of me. I thought I looked attractive. I was rugged up in winter. And I got like a few matches and had a few dates, but it was very ordinary, an ordinary experience. When I went on all those years later onto Tinder after the bike ride, I was feeling fit and healthy and strong, and I had really good energy. And I took this one selfie of myself, and I looked strong, fit, healthy. I'm very proud. I've got a good cleavage. And I put this photo up, and I was very apprehensive because even though people had told me to go on it for years, I was like, oh, no, I can't. I was fearful of the rejection. I actually got a really good response. So I felt vulnerable, but I soon got confirmation that I suppose I was desired and attractive. So it's quite very different experiences.
And is that just the nature of how instant the app gives you that, if you like, and I'm putting quote marks in the air, gratification, which is kind of similar to the dopamine fix we get in all social media in a way, you know, when you get likes and so forth. I mean, that has an impact on our self-esteem and perhaps validation in a way. Is Tinder just really good at doing that?
Yeah, it is. And there's been some research done around it that says that, 60% of people go on it for that validation. And I'm just like, wow, like that's pretty crazy, because you get an instant fix of getting a match. But that's quite problematic sometimes, because sometimes when people are on it for that reason, then they're not going to do anything with the matches. So there's disappointment at the other end if there is somebody else who's actually there to meet people.
Yeah, absolutely. In IRL, as my kids say, in real life. I mean, not everyone wants to just stay on the app, I guess. Sometimes it's more than that, hopefully, for a lot of people. So What do you think the best thing is about Tinder dating? And then again, what's the worst? And do you have any stories? And of course, we don't expect you to disclose names while you share these stories.
So the best thing is that you can't see your competition.
Yeah, right.
So you're no longer at the pub with your mates hitting on the same.
Or doing speed dating. Do you remember that? When you all... I did that.
Gosh.
I was around for that.
Yeah. And speed dating, you only had a choice of 10.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so the likelihood of finding good matches and, people who really connect is really low. So it's quite efficient, I think, is another point. My business partner, who's a scientist, and she contributed to the book, she just found it, systemized it for herself. So she found that the best thing, she's a very auditory person, is she'd match with people. Firstly, when she put up the profile, you have to mention like a green frog. She'd say, if you want to, when you message me, mention green frog. And then that they're very creative about how they mention green frogs. And then she'll have it like a couple of lines, and then she'll just say, hey, the best way, to get to know me is to have a phone conversation. And so therefore she cuts out people who aren't brave enough to do that, who aren't keen enough to do that. And so then she gets a real feel for them on the phone. So that's really one of the benefits, is it's almost like you can streamline it and systemize it. Just as Amy Webb, who did a TED talk on it in the US about 7 years ago, and she found her husband, again, she was a scientist as well, had an awful photo of herself in her lab coat, got no matches, tweaked it, found a process that really worked for her. So they're two really key things about it, is you can't see your competition, and you can create a system and streamline your dating for yourself.
Excellent. And the worst? What's the worst thing about it, from your experience?
The worst part about it is the rejection and the physiological reaction your body has, even if you know it's a fake profile, even if you know that person's not right for you. The fact that you're being rejected hurts. Our body reacts that way to protect us. So it feels really ordinary to get rejected. But I just go, well, it's a numbers game. And also, people put all this effort into their career, into all in their sport, going to the gym. They spend hours, and yet some people aren't willing to, and you don't always have success trying to lift the weights at the gym. You have
Absolutely.
to work up to it. And it's the same with dating apps. So yes, it hurts, but I'm now quite pragmatic about it and just go, yep, okay, that happened. Next. Got enough matches, it doesn't matter.
And I guess in some ways everyone's in the same boat from that perspective. And of course we all react differently, but a lot of people would be having a lot of the same experiences. So is there a sort of sense of camaraderie in some way on Tinder, or is it very individual, and in some ways that's what makes it great too, because you can kind of do this on your own terms?
Yeah, I don't know about so much camaraderie on Tinder, but when people talk about the app, they can connect over their experiences. Most people have a good dating story and an ordinary dating story. And, what I think is quite not useful is where people just bag the app and make, the blamers of the world who blame circumstances and don't realise that they come into the equation. So there's a lot of guys out there who, pleasant enough guys, and they just write on there, oh, I'm not good at taking selfies. So they don't find any other way. They don't ask their friends for a good photo of them. They don't get someone to take a photo.
Oh, right. So they go on there with no photo. Like, it's like LinkedIn. My equivalent obviously is different because it's professional, but I wouldn't connect with someone on LinkedIn, for example, who didn't have a profile picture, even if they were the CEO of a well-known organisation. I just find that a bit weird.
Yeah, you've got to build the trust. And so, or they'll put a photo where they've taken it and it's 3 chins, and you're just like, we've got nothing else. And then you complain because you're not getting matches. We've got nothing else to go on. So, and we're all human.
And we're all visual, so let's be honest, at the end of the day.
Visual, especially women. So I think for guys, it's really important to just take some time and put some, time and energy into getting some good photos. Play with it, test and measure. Often, you'll find your star photo that for some reason just works. And then,
Yeah. And it probably doesn't have to be like the one which is, like you say, professionally taken. It could be a selfie. Also, I must admit, I've had friends say, oh my goodness, the problem is people put up a photo that's like 5 or 10 years old, and then they meet them in real life and it's, they look like they should at their age, but that's not what they put out there.
Yeah. And I'm not, again, in my book, I mention it. If you've got a photo that you just love of you looking hot 5 years ago, great. But put another 4 up of today, because then we'll know that, that's an old one. That's fine. But it's just when you've only got that old one that it becomes problematic.
Yeah, absolutely. False advertising, as they say. So what really prompted you to write a guide to Tinder dating for men? And I guess, for a lot of people, it will be about, as you say, getting laid or having sex with people that they meet. But surely there's more that goes on in terms of securing a fabulous Tinder date for a lot of other people. And there are many stories, I guess, of real relationships that have started online through Tinder and other apps. And so why did you have getting laid as the focus of your book? And I know that, on Tinder, there's about 30 million matches apparently registered every day, and that's heaps. But surely not everyone's just in it to have sex.
Yes, great question. I just felt like if I wrote a book for men on how to communicate well with women, that it wouldn't sell so well.
Oh, clickbait.
But not even, I think that's got a negative, even the term clickbait.
Sure.
I'm not being misleading, because the things that I suggest in the book are going to help you get laid, get a BJ if that's you want. I've got a section on how to ask nicely. But it also is, opportunity to meet women for relationships. So, for instance, the stats around that are 20% of people go on Tinder to get, for hookups or one-night stands. It's almost like they come around to the house, have sex, leave, right? So it's some variation of that, or meet at the pub, go home, etc. Then there's 20% who want, they know that they want a serious relationship, maybe marriage. And a third of all marriages in the US at the moment start online. So, a lot of people are very successful at that. And then there's that middle ground of 60%. We'll often ask people and they don't really know what they want. So a lot of guys that I met, 6 years ago, they're now got partners and babies, they're in their 30s. So there's this middle ground of, I'd like to meet someone, but I'm open to having some fun along the way. So definitely it's not all about getting laid, but especially for guys, it grabs their attention and they're not going to turn down the opportunity a lot if it comes their way on their journey to finding more. Because the stats are also that you won't find many elderly men on their own in comparison to women. Men actually like to be partnered more than women. So, I think there's this stereotype, and I've got a chapter in the book saying men are after only after one thing, and they are a relationship eventually when the time is right.
Absolutely. No, that all really makes sense when you explain it like that. It does say, according to the Tinder stats that I read, that almost 80% of Tinder users in 2020 were male. So are men still really the pursuers on the online dating world? Or what's your experience? I mean, do women need help in a book too, a different book clearly?
Yes, yeah, great. I think they do. I think Matthew Hussey is a great resource for women who's already out there doing lots of great stuff about online dating for women. I think where I was coming from was that there wasn't much out there from a woman's perspective from a man, because the stuff around getting laid or dating was quite, some of it was it around being deceptive or, towards women.
Okay.
And I wanted to come from, there's a lot of women out there who want fun and just sex too. We just don't admit it, right? And so I wanted to provide that resource for men from a woman's perspective. A woman's perspective on how to ask for consent. Like men are often told what not to do. Where I always
Yes.
wanted to go, yeah, hey, don't push her head down for a BJ. Women hate that. There's no woman that I've ever spoken to who likes that. Here are some suggestions. Here's what you could try. Here's what you could, the conversation you could have. So I think definitely that, women have a book for women would be great as well. But I just felt really strongly about giving men a book, really with resources and ideas and a few laughs as well.
Of course. What advice would you give anyone wanting to meet new people on Tinder or other apps? And I guess your book covers a lot of that nuanced detail about profile pics and things like that. But I guess once you've sort of agreed to meet up with someone, what's some of the things which you think people need to bring to the party, if you like?
I think, as you mentioned earlier, about the photos, I think that's your starting point. So you really need to get some good photos. And then I think there's this thing, if you're so good looking or you're just like, you're in that top 3% of men, you don't really need to do anything else. Like but most of us, men and women, have to put in a little bit of work. So if you're not in that category, I would then, a lot of the apps now have prompts where you can, you say you might share your best dating story, or they give you a prompt to finish a story, like my best holiday destination is, so it makes it really, really easy for them. Other things that you can do is they say that, if you're connected to Spotify, is 88% more chance of getting matches as well. I don't know if that's true or not. It was really interesting because people feel like, I don't know, when you connect yourself on the app to other things like your Insta or your Spotify, it also builds that trust because they can go and, check you out. And then the other thing is when you match, actually showing an interest in the woman, because no matter, even if you do want to just have sex with someone, a woman wants to be seen for more than that. And you need to be respectful and fun and playful, or use, or even write something. And so again, my friend Carmen has a picture of her. She does CrossFit, lifting weights, and they'll say something like, "Oh, you've got to love a strong woman."
Yes.
Isn't that a nice thing to say? That's relating as an opening line to somebody about themselves. Because a lot of men just go, hey, and like, what are we supposed to do with that?
No cheesy kind of cliche lines, I guess, as well. I mean, it should be obvious, but, no bad jokes or cheesy kind of, obvious.
And again, it's all personal preference. I don't mind a cheesy line occasionally if you haven't heard it before, or it's still better than hey.
Yeah, I know. It's like a teenager talking like it was hey on, Snapchat. It's like, that's not a conversation. You need to actually add something else.
And then another thing is around, and this is getting into the nitty gritty, and most people know this, but especially say guys who've been married for years and then they come out and they're not really big on texting or apps, and then, so they're not used to it as well. Ask a woman a question. When she gives an answer, comment on her answer. Like
don't just leave it hanging there, like.
Or
okay.
Then you ask another question. Then you ask, and the questions like, where do you live? And we don't like these list of questions. It's like, do you live close enough? What are you on here for? Like it's like they just want to tick these boxes to see if you're going to be, up for some fun. So we don't like that either. So it's much better to show an interest in the person, in your communication.
And look, it seems quite simple, but maybe we've overcomplicated it because there is probably, it's quite easy and a bit anonymous initially, I think, on Tinder and the other apps, as well. It's not like when you meet someone in a bar or in a workplace or, through friends where you probably can't sort of play as many games if you like. You've got to be real because you're in front of them. Do you think that makes a difference that initially this connection's online versus, face to face?
I think it's a great point. When you met your husband at the party, who wasn't your husband then, it's, you're there and you're connecting and it's great, the face to face, but you don't really know anything about their background. Like some beautiful things like more diverse people are getting together now due to online dating.
Yeah,
so there's an increase in interracial marriages, which I think is a great thing. So people are not just going by people who look a bit like them. They can, find out about people's interests and passions and values and then make a decision based on that, whether they want to meet the person. So, and, because we tend to stick in our own little friendship groups and community.
We do.
And whereas online...
Yeah, that's limited too, isn't it? Because, you only can meet so many people really at one time through friends because we've all got limited circles in a way.
Yeah. And I just think that's fantastic where people are, I had a friend of mine who got her partner's Vietnamese, another one Indian, and so it's like this. I just love the diversity and opportunities for people to
meet who maybe otherwise wouldn't. Maybe
exactly, and I think that's a great thing about it.
Absolutely, and I think it's a reflection of society as well, and the fact that at the end of the day we're all just human, and sometimes the things that we think make us different actually are not really all there. It's just perception, and so if we can, allow an app helps you break down that barrier, it's got to be a positive.
Definitely.
So a bit of a personal question. Have you found love and connection on Tinder? And so can you advocate that is something that Tinder can do well?
I think it can do well because I know a lot of people who are married or in committed relationships through Tinder. So by, seeing it around me everywhere, I know that it happens. A lot of people still don't share that they met online. I think there's still a bit of a stigma around it. It's getting better.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I imagine that how else are you really going to meet someone, and particularly during COVID times, there wasn't really mass parties or dinner parties or get-togethers. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? There's still that stigma because I would think it's one of the most normal ways to meet someone. It's probably stranger now to meet someone standing at a bus stop because that just doesn't really happen.
And a lot of people will say, we met, online. And so then you don't know, did you, and so there's less stigma around, Hinge or Bumble where the woman writes first, or Plenty of Fish, or like there's other ones. Tinder's just got, because it started out the way it did all those years ago, the concept of, swiping the way based on the way someone looked, it still has more of a stigma. But people will say, more people will say that they met online, but it's not something that they're going to share. Another stat is around, I think it's about a quarter to a third of people have sex on the first time they meet somebody, even back in like parties and whatever else. But we don't share that stat. You don't tell your kids, hey, Daddy and I shagged on the first date. It's not something that is talked about. So I think there's still, especially in Australia, there's still a lot of
quite conservative
around sex and relationships. The other part of the question was about me. I don't actually want to find love on Tinder. So Fair enough. So I might change my mind, and that's the thing around it. What I want changes, quite often. But I feel strongly about creating a reality for myself that it works for me and my circumstances. So, I have 2 beautiful kids. I have amazing friends that I go on holidays with, I have adventures with. I don't necessarily want to find the one person to do life with. So, and I might, next year I might, but at the moment,
at the moment I
don't.
That's
so I might change. When I first went on, I just wanted to, get sexual again after so many years. And then it changed to, actually, no, I want to play tennis or golf or hang out or, whatever. So it's not just, you just want a one night stand or you want a relationship. I think it's on a bit of a continuum and there's different versions.
Absolutely. I just want to ask you a couple of questions I ask all my guests. And even though this is very much, it's a blur. It's not just a personal podcast topic. I think it's professional as well because you've got a book out there. But in your sort of career and business and life journey, have you had a couple of mentors? And are there one or two that had a great impact that you'd like to acknowledge?
I think my greatest mentor was my mother, who made sure that even though we didn't have much money, that she encouraged all of her 6 daughters, to go off to university and to be brave in the world, like I'm doing by putting this book out. And then also to those books, like I did the corporate thing, I had the corporate career, and all those leaders out there and managers who acknowledged me and saw my differences as being strengths. So people who,
Yes.
if we had more people out there who don't fit the mold actually being celebrated and encouraged to use their strengths even more, what would happen in corporate Australia and corporate America and in businesses worldwide? I think it would be pretty spectacular. So, they're my mentors, and I don't want to name managers of the past, but those people out there who really celebrate difference, diversity, and challenging people to use their strengths to be better and give more to the world.
If we spoke in a year's time, Maureen, what would be the number one thing you would have hoped you could have changed in your life and why?
Changed.
Evolved, improved, you can insert whichever word you like, but I always like people to have a bit of a crystal ball to see what they would like to work towards.
I want to work towards, I want to be a best-selling author, and I'm getting older now. I'm in my 50s, and I feel like I don't want to head into my 60s and not have done the things that I want to do. And I've done a lot of had amazing adventures, but I want to be out there in the world, giving all I've got inside without worrying what people will think of me. Because this book was really hard because there's judgment around there in the world, and often the judgment comes from those closest to you as well.
Of course.
So I want to just authentic. That word gets a bit overused, but I just want to, give everything, not leave anything in the tank and not worry so much about being judged by others.
That's a great goal. Final takeaway message for us on the politics of Tinder.
The takeaway message would be to have a go. If you want to get out there on the dating scene, if there's things stopping you, you've just got to take the next step. And then when you take that next step, then it'll become clearer. So just like anything in life, there's going to be some rejection, there's going to be a bit of pain, but the more no's you get, the closer you are to getting a yes.
That's a great sort of way to sum up what's been a very interesting conversation. And of course, if you do want to connect further with Maureen and buy her book, if you're interested in that, there will be some details on the show notes. As always, until next time, do take care. Thanks, Maureen.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for listening today. If you've enjoyed the politics of everything, I thrive on your feedback. So please add a short review and share the podcast with your network through Apple, Spotify, and all the usual suspects. I'm always on the hunt for new and diverse guests, so if you or someone you know has a fresh idea you're busting to get out there, please email me at amber@amberdanes.com and my crew will get back to you very soon.